All right, so we got.
Brian Zakelli, I think I have 2 minutes to go. Is that correct?
Yep, 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Perfect.
Okay. Are all the members of the board in attendance so far? Brian Zakelli, Josh Morris, are we set to begin?
Just 1 minute.
Okay. Very good.
Or if you plug into this one, will it help since it's coming from the other side? Like if you just plug into this one since it's closer? You good? On. Just so the cord's not running across your lap if you want to move it. If you want to run this way. That's easier, so you're not running across your
Just let me know when it's. Let me know when we're set to begin.
Let's leave it for now. Hopefully be here
For now. I think so.
Right.
Yep.
Just let me all know when we're set to begin.
I think we're set.
Vacation. I was like, oh my God.
All
Think we're
yours,
set?
Luke.
Here we go.
Yep.
Okay. Brian, Josh, we set to begin?
Yep. We are ready. Lou?
Okay.
Very loud.
Excellent. Very good. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for for those at DCAT who helped get all the tech together this evening. I'm Lou George. I'm the chair of the planning board. We're here for our public meeting being held at the Danvers Senior Center, 25 Stone Street in Danvers, December 10th, 2024 at 7 p.m. I'm participating remotely here this evening. And so in terms of any sort of public comment that comes up at the meeting, I will have to rely on my fellow board members. I'll ask Jean Hartman, our clerk, if she can just assist in terms of speakers today. And I will also be, for votes, I'll also ask for roll call votes as well, just to be able to follow along better, because I'll be participating remotely. So that all being said, the first agenda item here is Maple Square, 128 Maple Street, sign package presentation to the planning board, a condition of the site plan decision. I know we had this discussion at our last meeting. So is the applicant here to present? At a status?
Yes. The applicant is here and coming to the microphone.
Okay, great. Thank you, Josh. And I was going to mention also, for the record, we have at the meeting today for town staff, we have Josh Morris and Brian Zakelli.
Okay, my name is Craig Van Steele from AAM 15. We're the developer of Maple Square. And I apologize because you met a couple weeks ago, Tuesday before Thanksgiving. I was on the Zoom call, but you couldn't hear me and I couldn't hear you. So I may have some more questions than answers today. But at the time, we had discussed some of the signage that was going on in Maple Square. Gary represented us from our sign company. There were some concerns about the quality of the signs that we had presented, and there was a desire on behalf of the planning board here to kind of elevate the quality of the sign. So we came back with a different design that we think achieves that. And this is an example, kind of a flat example of the sign. You'll see on the next page a more live picture example from a different property, Milliard Luxury Apartments. And this is a simulated view on the bottom. If you want technical questions about the materials, Gary would be the best person to ask, but this is kind of one of the first things that we wanted to present to you was the sign for the curved corner front of the building.
Mm-hmm. Good, thank you. Mr. Paris, do you have anything further to add, or I can turn things back to the board and ask any, and they can ask some questions?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, very good. And so I'm going to turn it over to the board. Jean, did you have any questions for the applicant coming out of looking at this update now?
Yeah, thank you. Is that type of signage going to be for all of the commercial spaces? Have you updated the sort of like light box signage that you presented last week?
So I think we're going to depend on whatever retail tenant comes into the individual spaces to come back to the planning board with their own sign design. So I don't expect a uniform sign design across the retail spaces.
Okay. I do like what you presented for the main entrance, but I think we were probably expecting to see what was going to be there, since there was an idea for last meeting, and also would like to see uniformity across the building.
Okay.
Anything else? Any other questions you have?
No other questions.
Okay. Jim Sears?
Yes, thank you. It definitely looks like you put more thought into it. I'm just wondering on the second slide, if you could go to that for the, so is it no longer internally lit, or is it more lit on the letters like that appears to be? Could someone just explain how it's going to be lit?
Actually, there's internal lighting, and it's called a push-through letter, so Milliard is pushed through the face of the sign, and just it's edge lit, kind of like a halo lit. So it just bounces off the back. It's very subtle, but you get kind of a silhouette of the letters. So it's a lot less than the white acrylic faces that you saw before. and then we apply like a black vinyl to the face of the letter. And at night, you would just see Maple Square lit up and MS.
And the other signs above the retail stores would have a similar,
They can certainly be that way, but as Craig said, that I think he's looking for them to pull their own permits and go through the process, but they should, if it's dictated, they can certainly follow this as the premier sign, and then they have to follow in suit.
yeah, I think like Gene mentioned, I think we'd like to see some uniformity, so it's not all haphazard, I think that's a good look.
Okay?
That's
But
all I
It's
have.
pretty standard technology.
That's it from me, Lou.
I would just add to
Okay,
that, I
great.
think
Thank you,
we
Jim.
should come back on the retail side and maybe come with a uniform signage package on the retail. Whether it matches this or not, I think that's a discussion we should have later, because it may make sense to have kind of one marquee sign and then a standard set of retail signs on Hobart Street that may not be exactly the same. So I don't want to commit necessarily to that, but I will commit to coming back on the retail signage with a package, and we'll let you know what we have here, and you can weigh in at that time on whether or not you think there's, some congruence there.
Okay.
Okay, sounds very good. Jim, anything further on your side?
No, that's it. Thanks, Lou.
Okay. Tim Spittle. Tim, do you have any questions or comments?
No additional questions from what's already been asked. Thanks for the updated presentation.
Okay. Michael DeCoulis.
Thanks, Lou. Last time when you guys were here, you talked about trying to get this into production ASAP because you were timelines and stuff. This says it's all conceptual in terms of colors and design and all that stuff. So what we're seeing isn't actually what's going to be on the board. It's just the concept of the push-through letters. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, that's accurate. It'll be pretty consistent with what you're seeing on the mill yard sign, so that's why I want to give you a live type picture, so it will be consistent with those colors.
But the teal and the MS logo and all that is not.
The MS logo will, but the teal is not part of the design.
Okay. Thank you.
Mike, anything further at all?
No, thanks. I
Does
appreciate
that
it.
satisfy some of your concerns? Okay. Okay, very good. Yeah, in terms of my questions I have is just the, and I do appreciate the revision here and coming back on, pretty much, since our previous meeting, so we appreciate that. I agree that uniformity is important. I think that we do need to have, some uniformity here. Just for the, this is a lot, this will be a building in the area. So I think having that uniform do the concerns about, in terms of retail clients but I think coming back, I think makes sense, coming back to the board once you have a sort of a retail plan to make sure that we have some consistency. Turning back to town staff on that, is that something, Josh and Brian, is that something that can be, that in essence they come back with a, once they've gotten their retail clients organized?
I think that's fine. One comment I would make from staff is that it'd probably be beneficial to not maybe have each individual tenant come in individually at different meetings, but maybe once you have a couple of tenants kind of lined up, we could do something similar, but present this is what what the signs will be for the 3, 4, 5 tenants that are going to be there, and maybe not like each individual tenant. That would be my only comment. But
Okay.
I think that's fine.
Okay, I think that's coming back to the applicant, is that agreeable to you in terms of coming in with in essence, once you have all of your, or at least some tenants, as opposed to just coming on sort of a one-off for each one?
You know, I think we had, basically a week to put this together, so I didn't want to, we didn't have the time really to get into the retail signage,
Sure.
if it was gonna be different. I'd like to spend some time, be thoughtful about what we'll present as a package. A couple things crossed my mind. Number one, if uniformity is gonna carry the day, let us come back with something that's in the same family of what we're talking about, if it's not exactly the same.
Sure.
My concern is obviously retail tenants like to brand and have their own branding
Yep.
element. So that would be my concern about uniformity in the retail signage. And, you see a lot of buildings in town and around town that have individual branding, right? So not that CVS is going to be a tenant, but CVS certainly would not like the Milliard type sign as their retail tenant signage.
Sure. Okay. Understood. I hear what you're saying. So coming back to the board, is there anything, is this approach make sense to all you in terms of having them come back when they have it, at least it seems like at least a small cadre of retail tenants to kind of cover the retail signage?
Yeah,
I think my only concern, Lou, with that is that we're asking the developer to basically, if he has a tenant, wait till he has enough tenants to come back to us, and one of them might want to move forward, and that's a pretty common thing with retail tenants. They don't always get them all at the same time, so that's my only concern with that, and I'm wondering if there's a way in the lease letter for the tenants that they just have a standard, I'm not saying this is the answer, but everyone has push-through lettering, and then they need to just follow those guidelines, and then they can meet with town staff to approve that. I don't know, I just don't expect the developer to wait until they have all of their tenants lined up. That could be a long time, we never know. So that's my only concern, but I don't know what other people's thoughts are.
Okay. Other thoughts in that regard, anybody?
I think that's a good point, Mike. I'm with you on that. I think we like the push-through lettering, as long as you don't see something outlandish color-wise or throwing it off. We got what we wanted, I think, as far as the design and the lit lettering, if you will, as opposed to the whole sign being lit. So I think staff can work with the applicant on that. I'd be fine with that.
Okay. Got it. All right. And Gene and Tim, does that work for you all as well?
yeah, that makes sense.
Agreed.
Okay. Good. All right. And then coming back to town staff, does that seem like it makes sense, Josh, in terms of, so that it looks like there's some consensus here that they, that the developer works with town staff as well as, ensures that there's some uniformity in the tenants, and it might mean that an applicant comes back in, not necessarily after waiting for a bunch of, for the other applicants. For the other tenants.
So just to confirm or to clarify, when there are retail tenants, if they present signage that in our determination is very similar to this, then they can move ahead. And I guess if we feel that it's not within this kind of, use the term family or, very similar to this, then maybe we would
The push-through signage,
bring it back to the board saying, is that what we're all agreeing to? Okay. Very
Yeah.
good.
Okay. That seems to make sense. Anything further from the board on this? This is not a public hearing as well, but if there's any members of the public who have any questions, I could entertain some limited questions from the public if they have questions about this. Yeah.
I guess there's one public question or comment, but if we could request you go to the microphone with your name and address, that would be appreciated.
Mark Arthur, 181 Pine Street. Does Danvers
Yes.
does Danvers have any kind of regulations or standards on commercial properties maintaining frontage? Windows, signs, things like that, shrubbery? Because this is going to look beautiful when it's done, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now, how do we regulate that?
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to turn that question, Josh or Brian, can you address that
Well,
issue in terms of I guess in terms of, I mean, this would all fall within the site plan review.
yeah, I mean, obviously, we'd work with the property owner, if there are issues arise in the future, in terms of maintenance. I mean, I think it's, if it's on the public side, it's public sidewalk or public, infrastructure, then it's Town of Danvers. But if it's private, we would work with the property owner, management to, ensure that it's looking nice, up to par. And if there are issues that arise in the future, we can have a communication and correspondence and kind of work those out. So.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. That address your question, or is there anything further at all? Very good.
There is regulation regarding signage, like, for example, the retail establishments cannot put signage on the glass, on the windows and things like that. So there is regulation as to that. I mean, so you get basically one sign per retail outfit there. So.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Jim. Okay.
So, Brian, I don't know if we need to talk about the awnings or not. Do we need to talk about the awning?
I mean, the awnings are compliant with the regulations based upon the square footage of the sign and the frontage of the property. So we don't have, we do have design guidelines for banners, for awnings, and you're within those guidelines. So they're, it's really up to the board, but there's not really a lot of talk about related to the compliance.
Thank you, Brian.
And then, can we go to the temporary banners we talked about? So
Okay.
we were looking for permission to have some, these may not be the exact signs, but during the lease-up process or for a year, whichever is earlier, to have leasing signs on the corners of the building, so one on Maple Street, one on Hobart Street, one in the middle, that would just let us advertise that we're now leasing the apartments. Those, again, would be temporary. They'd be affixed to the side. They would be taken down if we were permitted, at latest a year from, occupancy.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, any questions from the board with respect to this this piece of it, sort of getting into the temporary signage? Questions from Jean?
No, I mean, we do allow temporary signage, right? What is the limit for that?
We'd have to confirm. It might be less than a year, but we can, we would communicate that with you folks.
Okay. Okay. Anything further, Jean?
No.
Okay. Tim?
No questions, seems straightforward, thanks.
Okay. Jim?
All set.
Okay. Great. Mike?
Quick question. Can you just comment, there's two different designs. Is there white one that's on the end and versus the green ones? Are you doing two different ones, or is it just?
I think it'll probably be two different ones. I'd like to leave that open unless you need a
No, I'm just
definitive
curious.
answer.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm not the design person.
Okay.
But, if there's a strong preference one way or the other, I certainly could commit, but I think I'd like to leave that open. They'll generally be in the designs that you'll see here on this page, and I think there's maybe another page or the page before this.
Yeah, I think the green ones just fit in a little better, the way they're kind of like horizontally in between the windows, versus the last one is kind of more of a postcard stamp between four windows, but that's just my personal thoughts on it.
Yeah, and I think that works a little bit better on that section of the building. So if you pan out from the building, you'll see that, this is the front corner,
Yeah.
which is easy to see that, but on the sides of the building, when you get towards the corners, what you're calling the card, the postcard type look is a little bit more
Okay.
visible.
And then my other thing was just, if we could just make sure that these things fall down a lot because they just are temporarily put up there, so we could just make sure they're, with town staff, that they're always like fixed quickly, because they just look terrible when they're hanging and flapping in the wind, so I don't think that's anything. But other than that, I'm all set, thanks.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, in terms of any of my comments on it, I think that, my fellow board members captured it. I mean, the white sign sort of struck me as a little bit out of place compared to the other ones. But again, these are temporary, so I'm not as concerned as if it were a permanent sign. So I don't have any further questions in that regard. Josh, anything from town staff as to that remaining piece there?
If they need any type of an extension for putting it longer than the required time, they would be back in front of the planning board to do longer than that. It depends how long you are going to keep it up, but that's probably the last potential process that they might have to do related to the signage. Everything else is compliant,
Okay.
but it does matter about the time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brian. Okay, very good. Is there anything further from the applicant on this package? I think they covered everything. Is that correct?
Yeah, everything's covered. Thank you to the town of Danvers. Appreciate working with you all.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming back and for doing those, for taking our feedback as well at our last meeting. So, and again, if there's anybody, assuming there's no members of the public who has any further questions, Josh, can we move on to the next item?
Yes. I just wanted to make one just quick announcement
Yeah.
to the board, for the board and for the public. If there's anyone in the public who's here for the Trask Lane item that is a little further on the agenda, I just wanted, for your time purposes, wanted to let you know that item is being continued. So just to be courteous of your time for this evening, if you were here for that item will not be discussed tonight. So, thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
So,
And this just came in relatively. It was relatively recently. This request for a continuance came in. Isn't that correct, Josh?
yeah, it was either last night or this morning. I can't exactly remember, but yes, within the last 24 hours.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for mentioning
Mr.
that.
Chairman, do you need a motion to approve the sign package or no? Would you like one?
I think that it would be. I will take the suggestion.
Move to approve the sign package as shown with input from the town staff as to retail signage.
Second.
Very good. Very good. Motion's been made by Jim Sears, seconded by Jean Hartnett. I'm going to ask for a vote on this by roll call. Either say aye, nay, or abstain. Jean?
Aye.
Jim?
Did you say Jim?
Aye,
Jim Sears?
for Jim.
Yep. Tim Spittle?
Aye.
Mike DeCoulis?
Aye.
And Lou George says aye. And passes unanimously. Very good. Thank you very much. Good luck. Okay. Moving on to the next item is the public hearing on the subdivision rules and regulations. This is the discussion of the new planning board rules and regulations governing the subdivision of land in Danvers, Massachusetts. What we had a discussion at our last meeting, and the public hearing was continued to today, following a vote with respect to one of the items within the subdivision rules with respect to dead-end streets. And it's my understanding from town staff that that I believe we were awaiting for a review from town council as well. So, Josh, did you want to give us an update where we've been since our last meeting and sort of where we need to go?
Sure. So we did send from our last meeting, our latest version to town council, who did review it. They did send us and the board a response memo with a couple comments and or suggestions and modifications. Those comments and edits have been incorporated into this final document. That's where, and also the item that was discussed at the last meeting about the dead-end streets was modified, was updated with the vote of the board on that item also. So where we sit now is what we feel as staff the latest and greatest. So.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go and turn this over back to the board for any questions or discussion about this, about these new rules and regulations. So why don't I begin with Jean Hartnett?
No, I don't have any other questions.
Okay. Thanks, Jean. Jim Sears.
I think it might be helpful just to point out the changes to the audience, or people that might be watching that and relying on the presentation for the changes suggested by town council. If we could just review it quickly.
No, thank you, Jim.
Yep.
No, I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you. Josh, for town staff, do you mind doing that?
Yep. So one of the sentences that they wanted us to add is in red on the board, but I can read it quickly.
Please do.
Yep. This is referring to the section of, waivers. And this is a sentence they want us to add. It said, no waiver shall be approved at the preliminary plan stage. If waiver is discussed or considered at the preliminary plan stage, it is only preliminary and subject to change when the more detailed definitive plans are submitted and considered. So essentially, I think that's when, waivers, if they're discussed at the preliminary stage, it doesn't mean that they're granted. It's really at the definitive stage when they're granted. So that was, I think, the impetus for that. Let me see. Sorry. I kept it in red. And then they wanted us on the screen here for the performance guarantee. They want us to write just the two words at the end of this sentence, referring to performance guarantee as long as the entire subdivision is secured by one method, and then they want us to write the words or another. So if it's a different type of financial instrument. And then at the top of performance guarantee, they wanted us to add the sentence, before endorsement of its approval of a plan, the planning board shall require that the construction of the ways and installation of municipal services be secured by one or in part by another or of the methods described in section 5.4. And then they just wanted us, one of their comments was referring to, we had put in a sentence that staff would review an application that's dropped off for a number of days. And then we just modified that sentence. At the end of the sentence, we added a couple words.
It said that we had to notify the clerk of the result of that review, and what happens if we don't notify the clerk from the result of that review.
Okay.
So those were the three items from the town council memo that were modified in the document.
Any concerns with respect to any of these comments? It didn't seem, anything that was surprising.
Not to me. I just,
Overly.
Yeah, just my only opposition is the requirement of a waiver being needed for a cul-de-sac now, and I just think that's an extra burden on a property owner who wants to develop his or her land. I've been on the board since the late 90s, and everything we've approved in town has been cul-de-sacs. There's not been, that I can, unless I'm mistaken, love to be corrected, but everything, at least in the last 20 years, has been cul-de-sac. So why we're going to force a property owner to now get a vote before they can bring the application waiving that's a new requirement. I'm not sure why we're doing it in light of the fact that there's extremely less developable land than there ever was in town. So now we're going to throw this in. I just don't see the need for it. Everything else is fine, but I'm not going to vote for it because of that. So, thank you.
Understood. Okay, understood. Thank you, Jim. Tim Spittle?
Yeah, no additional comments besides, beyond what was discussed at the last meeting. Thanks.
Okay, very good. Mike DeCoulis, any comments or questions with respect to this, to the revised subdivision rules?
No additional comments. Thanks, Lou.
Okay. Sure. And I don't have anything. I don't have anything further myself in terms of the, in terms of what I said at the at our last meeting with respect to the, with respect to the cul-de-sacs and the, and the new language that that prohibits them minus a waiver. In terms of my, as I explained, and I understand the concerns. I understand the concerns, but I believe that in terms of the concerns in terms of connectivity, as well as the fact that as well as other communities have adopted this as well, and it's a and indeed waivers have been granted. I believe that the benefits would certainly would outweigh any concerns, but that's as I explained at the last meeting. So I would be in favor of these revised regulations. So this is a public hearing. So if there's any members of the public, they can come to the podium and speak on this.
There are two members. I guess Mr. Morose, I guess.
Okay. You can go to the podium and
Yeah, hi, Jim Morose,
identify
town
yourself
meeting
for the
member.
record.
Did I just overtalk him? Okay. Jim Morose, town meeting
no
member,
problem.
precinct 3. Just a quick question. So the subdivision rules and regulations, are these standalone rules and regulations, or are they going to be part of the zoning bylaw changes that we're going to go over, that are in the special town meeting?
Sure.
These are going to be. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so subdivision in and of itself is definitely outside of zoning. Subdivision is not zoning, and it's not part of 40A for Mass General Law. It's its own thing. So that's why subdivision rules and regs are able to be changed just by the planning board themselves, whereas any zoning amendment needs town meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for the question, Jim.
Mr. McKenna?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question about, I don't know if it's in the
Could you
bylaw
identify
now or
yourself
not.
for
I
the-
think it should be,
Yes,
though.
identify yourself for the record.
I'm sorry, David McKenna, 3 Andover Street, Precinct 8, Town Meeting Member, sorry. I don't know if it's in the subdivision control law or not. I know the state does not require public notice for an A&R subdivision, which is approval not required. I think the town, if they are able to, should, because I know of at least 3 subdivisions in my neighborhood that slip by that shouldn't have. On Buxton Road, a piece of Rosewood's land was subdivided for 3 house lots. even though there had been a court settlement with a provision that that land would remain open space. Somebody forgot about it, it went through. By the time we found about it in the neighborhood, they were already digging foundations. The other was on Cemetery Road. Planning Board gave a subdivision for 3 lots with frontage on a private driveway that the applicant did not have any rights to. So, and there was another one where they almost subdivided a lot on Buxton Road. There was part of another piece of property that had been limited by court action to 3 lots that had already been built, and they were trying to subdivide for a 4th one. I caught that one and notified the planning department. Is that something that the town can implement? I think it's something that they should. If it's happened 3 times within a quarter mile of my home, how many times does it happen around the rest of town? And how many more times can it happen? Is that something we can? I know that the state doesn't require it, but can the town require it?
To the town.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Can I ask the town staff to answer that question?
So can we do it? Yes. Yes, we can. No, it's not required, as you know. It's a cost that would be borne, and a decision would have to be made not by really us. But yes, we can do it. You could do it in the subdivision rules and regs. However, I would want to have that okayed by council before doing that. But in short, I think it's a yes. I'll be very fully honest. I am not 100% sure, because no town does this that I know of. It's just not done. So it would be something new. Not that that's a horrible idea. It's just that there's not a lot of precedent. So I would probably want to see what they had to say. We wouldn't have to put it in the subdivision rules and regs to do that, however, for that notification. It could be a policy, for example. So there's a couple different ways to cut that.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to request that the board and the department consider looking into doing that. I think it could save a lot of aggravation down the line. Thank you.
Just to clarify, Mr. McKenna, what you're saying is, when someone comes in for an A&R approval not required of a subdivision, it's on our agenda, but there's no abutter notice, so abutters are not receiving notices, to clarify what you're saying so the public can understand.
That's correct. I think the public should have some kind of notice, whether it be next to abutters or just something in the newspaper. I think there should be some kind of notice, just so the rest of the people in the neighborhood who might have information about the history of the property would be aware that there's a subdivision being planned.
But even if they have notice, right, typically that's not something they can comment on at a meeting because it's an administrative hearing. So I'm not sure what you would gain by that.
They could at least make the department aware.
Aware of
there might
what?
be a restriction on the land.
Aware of, I'm not sure what they're making them aware of. They're allowed to subdivide their land if they meet zoning requirements and they bring in a plan that meets engineering requirements. So what does the abutter gain by being notified, I guess, is the question. I'm just trying to play it out for your...
All right, for the example on the Rosewood property, that land was dedicated by court order to remain open space. Town forgot about it apparently, and a subdivision came in as an A&R for 3 lots, and it was granted. Nobody knew about it in the neighborhood until they started digging cellar holes. The other property was approved with frontage on a private driveway that the property owner did not have any rights to, so he's sitting there with a 3-lot subdivision that he can't use.
Unless he gets access.
I'm sorry?
Unless he gets access to the public way.
Yeah.
Right, so someone who owns the private way would have to grant him access.
And then other property, like I said, had a court limit on how many times it could be subdivided, and they were going for, they were allowed 3 lots by court order. They were starting to go for a 4th one. I saw the survey stakes out there and talked to Aaron Henry to let him know that there was a restriction on it, and apparently the project got pulled.
Yeah.
But again, if the neighbors who know about the properties more than Town Hall probably does, You have a turnover in staff, turnover in the board. They don't necessarily remember what happened 15, 20 years ago. The neighbors
These
probably
are somewhat unique cases that you're mentioning, though, because you're dealing with a cemetery in private ways and things like that. These are not your average next-door neighbor, you know, hey, I'm subdividing my 40,000 square foot lot into 2 lots, I'm in residence too. I mean, these are unique somewhat to your property, or abutting.
But again, 3 incidents within a quarter mile of my home over the last 15 years. How many times has it happened someplace else?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's happened, but.
I don't
But
know.
I understand what you're saying, but wouldn't someone have spoke up on the larger one, the 3-lot subdivision with a court order, and still something could be done on that? You could have halted the construction even though they started digging,
They had already started digging foundations.
but you could halt the discussion, the construction if
We were
there's
told we couldn't.
if there's a court order,
Yeah,
I would think,
yeah, I don't know.
you know?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I just don't know, I
So-
mean, it's a formality. If they meet all the requirements, they're on the agenda, they give us a plan that's been done, engineered correctly, we pretty much have to approve it.
Unless
And
there
we
are
don't take any
restrictions on the
public
land
in-
they are not aware of.
We don't take any public input.
Okay.
We're not required to under the law. So I'm not sure what, I understand, you know, what you're asking for. I'm not sure we can even grant it or why we would grant it. That's all.
All right.
I don't know what staff thinks.
Thank you. Yeah, coming back to staff, what are your thoughts with respect to that in terms of, especially, you know, Jim's points in terms of that because the A&R process is, you know, in essence doesn't, you know, by its nature doesn't have, you know, doesn't allow public comment, and even if so if an A&R maybe was not suited to be an A&R in retrospect, even if someone was properly, you know, was notified, they wouldn't have had the ability to say anything in terms of this is not like there was a public hearing.
Yeah,
So
I would agree. It's kind of like a false sense that you can that you could change this process or have a voice in the process. But someone could easily make the case it's just for notification purposes, which is what I think. You know, Mr. McKenna is making, is just for notification purposes. But I would say that it's not like a special permit or site plan review or variance where the idea is to take in public comment. That's not the idea of an A&R in and of, like, by definition. It's in the name. So that's why it's extremely unique. But I mean, yeah, I can't really comment much more.
What does an abutter notice cost? So if you're going to require that on your application for an A&R, then the planning staff has to notify abutters within 300 feet, and that requires certified mail?
Not certified mail, but I mean, depending on the situation, it could be, you know, if there's a condominium complex, it could be 200, you know, it could be 200, 250, you know, letters for an A&R, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to sway that as like.
No, I know, we get them, I'm down by the mall, my office is down at the mall,
Right.
we get,
So that
anybody does anything
that
in
is
the
a
mall, we get
possibility.
notice.
That is a possibility.
So who
It's
pays
not-
that cost? The applicant would have to pay that cost for notifying someone where they can't even speak at the meeting. So I'm just,
So they just pay the cost of the legal
The
ad
filing-
in the paper.
Or there's no legal ad for A&R.
Or sorry, for, sorry,
Yeah, yeah,
they
sorry,
don't pay the
maybe.
cost of the mailings.
It would just be the filing fee when they, just a filing fee, which is, you know, generally cheaper than other applications, right? Because what it is.
but who would pay though? So who would pay if you began to require a notification? Would that be something that would be borne on the
I
applicant?
guess we would have to decide, we could decide who is doing the abutter notification. I guess that would be the next step if we were open or wanting to do it.
So, well, and then, you know, maybe the fee would go up slightly to cover the cost or, you know, to do that. It's honestly not so much of a money thing. It's probably more of an admin kind of time thing to do these types of things when like we've talked about, there's no real public comment for these types of subdivisions or A&Rs. Subdivisions are different.
right.
Okay. I'm going to see what the other, in terms of just to get a sense of the board. We heard from Jim expressed some concerns. Tim Spittle.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the examples you brought are very helpful. It does sound like from what Jim's saying, right, that even in those instances, those might have been sort of corner cases that we don't have much control over. So I can see both sides of, one, well, what does it cost really just to make more people aware? That might shake out some more information that would be helpful to staff since those corner cases were missed in previous examples. But I also agree that having recently participated in my first A&R, I was like, that's it? We don't really have that much to do in those. So I can see that it does create a bit more work for very little upside. And so I do wonder, it is presented in the agenda, for example. Are there ways that we can just better advertise? I, for example, get the agendas for all of the select board and school board meetings emailed to me every time. That could just be a way that we could encourage people to keep up on what's being discussed without adding that additional administrative overhead.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Tim. Mike, did you have anything to add on this one?
Did you have a comment before? I don't.
No, well, so.
Okay. No, I don't think I have anything at this time, Lou. Thanks.
Okay. Jean, did you have anything further on this particular question that Dave McKenna raised?
Yeah, I think kind of the bigger question on these A&Rs is why are restrictions not, why are they kind of falling through the cracks? And is there a way that we can, flag things?
I mean, I can't speak to things that happened before I was here. I'll start there. But we do a deep dive that is possible within the registry in our files. So
Okay.
that's what we do. If someone didn't file something at the registry, or if there's something that's misplaced, that happens sometimes, I would not say that is, running the show. Yeah, and I can only say that. I mean, these are strange cases that are, again, not the norm, but there's a lot of debate there in terms of what we're talking about in general.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I mean, my own thought is just I'm a little bit, I mean, I definitely understand the concerns, and you could certainly see that a case where an A&R may have, potentially, and again, I'm not saying about anything happened in the past, but you could imagine, that potentially an A&R could go through that maybe should not have been, that something was not uncovered on a deeds or record search. But the concern I have, though, is that the nature of the A&R process is that because comment is not taken at the meeting, it's an administrative item. It doesn't. I would be concerned with adding more to the process that doesn't exist, or an expectation to a process that doesn't exist. So that's sort of a reservation that I would have in terms of incorporating this as part of the subdivision control. I mean, in terms of in terms of dealing with the subdivision rules. One of one potential, I think, was we could always, I think Brian said this could be something that could go into that could potentially be a policy, and I'm not sure if that's worth staff looking into, whether that should be looked into. So, but I'm just not, I'm a little bit, I'm leery about including it at this moment, just because of the nature of the process.
I thank the board for their consideration. I hope you'll think about it, because even if they can't come and speak at a meeting, because it's a public meeting and a public hearing, they can always notify the planning department that, hey, you better look into this on this piece of property, there's an issue, and then they know it ahead of time. Thank you. And Merry Christmas to
thank you.
everybody.
Same to you.
I was just going to say, Lou and the board, there is someone on the Teams meeting who I believe wanted to make a comment before we moved on.
Okay. Sure. Just before we move on to that comment, though, just with just with respect to this, to Mr. McKenna's, suggestion here, and I don't want to, it doesn't appear here that the, and again, I'm not, I don't want to put any words, but it doesn't appear that the board is interested in adding something to the subdivision rules proposal that we have before us tonight. But is it something that the rest of the board wants it to be, wants the staff to look into, or in terms of as part of a policy, or not at all?
I mean, I think Gene's point's a good one, right? That we have some examples in front of us of things falling through the cracks. So perhaps when A&Rs come in front of us, we can be a bit more discerning about understanding the information that was made available in the search that was conducted.
Sure.
And staff could consider in certain situations to just potentially connect with the butters to the extent there's not much information available.
Okay. Got it. So sort of leaving it on a case-by-case basis.
I would think so.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Anything further from anybody on that?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah,
All right. I think
there's a question on
And yeah, we also had someone online as well that
Sure.
had their hand up. Yep.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. If you can if you can identify yourself for the record and ask your question.
She's muted.
Oh yeah. Please unmute yourself.
There I am. Sorry about that. Joanne Bagucci, town meeting member, precinct 2. I just wanted to thank David McKenna for bringing up that issue. I think it happens around town a little bit more often than anyone realizes, and not to, anyone's discredit or anything like that. We're all busy. But I think I really kind of urge the planning board to look into something like this, similar, because the public feels, the residents in different neighborhoods, mine in particular right now in precinct 2, feels that they're left out of the process. The transparency's not there with the new subdivisions and development that's happening in town. For example, there was a very tough zoning board meeting last Monday night, and a lot of the residents, including myself, are upset. It's 181 to 182 Pine Street. That lot was supposed to be left. It was promised by the owners of 75 Sylvan Street. It was supposed to be left as open space and as a buffer between 75 Sylvan and the neighborhood, Hyde, Pine, and so forth. Well, come to find out that slice of land, and I think some more toward Adams Street, was sold to a developer last May. And now he wants to subdivide it. He wants 7 or 8 condos, something like that. He wants 8, but he's looking probably 7 that he, some of the neighbors didn't get notice on this. This is, everyone's kind of surprised at it. And I think if we don't let the residents know more about what's going on, there's going to be, a lot more meetings like last Monday night with a lot of unhappy people. And I know it's hard to add something to the process, but I think the town needs to, because I think the town needs to take a breath with all this new development that is coming down the pike, and be able to really know what the developers want to build on. 181 to 182 Pine Street is part of the old Sylvania plan. So now you're talking, that was supposed to be open space. It's not. I did request the select board to look into why that was never captured by the town as open
We probably don't want to
space.
get into a specific, we don't want to get.
I'm not getting into it. I'm not, but I'm just using that as a really good example here.
Sure.
That
Okay.
David McKenna is, the three in his precinct. Now he has one in mine that hasn't been developed yet, but is a prime example of, we need to do a little more research on what's going on with this land, these lands, because now we're talking about environmental issues, we're talking about this need to be a buffer. So what I'm saying is there needs to be something else in the process here. And I like that, David. I just want to say thank you, David, for bringing this up, and it's very important. And I urge the board to look into this more deeply as adopting this in the process. And I know the select board's looking into it, and there's going to be a lot more conversations about it. So I understand your reservations on the public doesn't get to comment for the A&R and things like that, but if we could adopt something similar that's not the A&R, that the public has more of a say in when they're putting in for the subdivision, it might be something that the town needs to look at closely. So thank you, David, for bringing that into the conversation. It's very important right now.
Thank you. Thank you for your.
That's all I have.
comment.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you. Okay. Very good. Any further comments at all, or any other sort of any other questions with respect to the what was discussed?
Lou, there's two public comments, so if you could just go to the microphone, Mr. Morose, again.
Sure.
Yeah, just quickly, Jim Rose, Town Meeting, Precinct 3. Just under advisement, I kind of chuckle every time I read these things where we have to post things in the local newspaper. The newspapers are like last century. We have, we got the town website, we got all this technology. We need to have a better way of advertising, or at least publicizing these things that are happening on the website, and just have hey, heads up, this is coming. And it could be not only just for the planning board, for all the departments. There needs to be some kind of way the citizens can get a quick look at what's going down. That's all. It's over and above the agendas come out, yes, beautiful, but. Okay.
Sure.
So, can I just speak very briefly? So just so
Yeah, please go ahead.
while people are here and listening, there's two ways that you can find out about what's going on. That's very easy, that you just have to sign up once. If you go to the main webpage and at the bottom it says notify me. When you click on that, you can click on any board or committee. If you're interested in A&Rs or anything about the planning board, you just click on the planning board, and then you get email however you want it. I believe it's the email as a PDF or notifications any way you'd like. So you're not waiting on town to push things out. Once you just sign up for it once, you will forever get those. The other way is the Planning and Economic Development Division. We put out permitting updates every month, where we say the petitions that we've gotten in, decisions that have been made by all the regulatory boards, Planning Board, Zoning Board, Conservation Commission, and those are on the Planning and Economic Development's website. So you can go to those at any time, and we have we do it every month. So that's a permitting update. So those are two ways that people can get informed. The easiest way would be, again, the main page. At the bottom on the left, it says notify me, and you can sign up for alerts for any board or committee, not just the regulatory boards. Thank you. Back to you, Lou.
No, thanks, Brian. I was going to go and sort of second that point in terms of the as even Tim alluded to earlier, mentioning about getting the email. Email of agenda, and I think the permitting updates are great. I think they're very helpful, and they're helpful to know what's on, what's coming along down the pike. But I do hear though. I definitely hear residents' concerns though about being advised about things that are affecting them, and so I hear you, but I just wanted to point out as well that there are some ways available right now to be able to at least keep abreast on things. So, is there a further? I think Josh, you said there was another question or comment from the audience.
Yep.
You can identify yourself and.
I'm Karen Nastic. I'm new to these meetings because I didn't know that this building was happening, the building downtown was happening. But mostly I agree that we've lost a lot of communication in Danvers over the last, since COVID. We don't have Myrna Fiera talking, friendly, telling us what's going on in neighborhoods
Sure.
and stuff. And it's been very hard on people who are older who haven't switched. I mean, people are canceling their newspaper subscription, so to say that 4-page newspaper is worth much, it's really not something we rely on. So something has to be done on a large scale to keep residents informed, whether there's a bulletin board. And I looked at some of these minutes, and the public hearing, you have to refer and refer and refer and refer. You don't get an overall of what's going on. And it's really hard to see these things going on and happening so quickly when we didn't even know they were happening. But mostly, and also in the name of neighborliness, just make sure that the communication happens in things that are happening on your street, but not, somewhat legally. So a letter gets sent or a phone call gets made. Have we informed everybody on the street that there's a subdivision coming over? And then if someone says, oh, it's affecting my driveway, you've got a communication going, and it can happen more organically if you can establish respect to make sure that people get notified. I
Great.
guess that's it. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that,
I have one more question.
for that comment.
The logo, did you talk
If
about?
you could just please speak up in the microphone, I'm sorry.
Did you talk about the logo design at all, or did you're just using words for the maple thing? I don't know why we just didn't use a maple leaf instead of more hardcore words. It might have been friendlier and more natural. That's all.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
There are
I believe that was a conceptual. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just wanted to let you know there are two more members of the public who would like to speak. If Kathy, if you'd go to the mic, that would be great.
Yeah, can you please identify yourself and state your comment or question? Thank you.
Hi, this is Kathy Simon, town meeting member, Precinct 7. Through the chair, I was curious. I feel like we got a little off track. I came here for this meeting because I understood that your planning board was going to vote today on dead-end streets. I did my homework on that, and I was ready to make a case if you weren't going my way. And I was just wondering, have you changed through the chair, I was wondering if maybe we could find out where you stand on them, and do I have to make my case for you
Well,
if you're changing your votes tonight?
Well, today, we have not had a vote on the subdivision rules and regulations as of yet. At our last meeting, we did have a vote with respect to the issue of dead-end streets based on some discussions that were held at the prior meeting. So there were several alternatives that were discussed at the last meeting, and the measure that was voted on that is now in the proposal to be voted on tonight includes a prohibition on new dead-end streets absent a waiver, but there is language in there with respect to a waiver. Does that and I want to make sure does that answer your question? And town staff, please jump in if since I'm speaking remotely here, I want to make sure I got everything straight.
Seems accurate.
Okay.
So did the
Ms. Simon, was
language, I guess the question then would be, does the language that you received from council, since we don't have privilege to read these items that you have, does it change your vote in any way? Through the chair, could we maybe find out if your vote has changed based on the information you received?
The vote was.
There's no
The
vote
vote
yet.
was made.
I thought it
We're in
was
the middle of
affordable.
the, we're in the middle of the public comment
Okay.
on the agenda item, so
All right.
it has not gone to a vote yet, to answer your question.
Okay, so
Yep.
in order
If
not
you have
to be
something
out
you'd
of
like to say
order,
about it.
As soon
I will,
as
ask
you
my
finish your
question.
question and the other question,
all right,
I think
I'll,
he'll bring it to a
I'm
motion
going
to
to
vote.
make my case then.
Yep,
So
that's
I'm
fine.
not out of
This is
order.
the appropriate time.
Thank you. So,
Thanks, Jim.
for squaring me away again. So my issue is dead-end streets. I am not in favor of carte blanche, making allowances for any developer to come in and put yet another dead-end street for a few reasons. One, as Jim said, there's very little land left in our town. We should be doing our jobs, which I know you are, in scrutinizing projects that come before us. What comes to mind is the Locust Street project. Recently, we had a big construction project on Locust Street. Because all of our streets are dead ends, there was very little DPW could do in order to detour our traffic to other areas. But more importantly, with very little land left, and we know that developers will then find large properties or older homes that have larger acreage, and they will find those and then be privileged to, without any kind of waiver, to just put in another cul-de-sac. I am not in favor of more cul-de-sacs in our town. I'd like us to be smarter in our planning. I'd like us to use our land better. I'd like more open space, more green space in our town. And I hope you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public questions or comments?
There are two, yep, there are two other members of the public wishing to discuss this item.
Sure. Absolutely.
Good evening, Jim Simon, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 7. I also am in favor of limiting the dead ends and cul-de-sacs. And what I have here is a memoir from our previous fire chief. I believe he retired in 1991, Leland Martin. And it's about the history of the Danvers Fire Department. It's very good. It's a very good read. And in here in 1979 it is, this was the year that I went head-to-head with the residents of Longbow Road and Seneca Drive before the planning board. I wanted a connector road between Summer and Locust Streets. The neighbors were vehemently opposed, and I lost that battle. I was opposed to dead-end streets then, and I am today. And he wrote this in '91. And from a firefighter perspective, a dead-end street can be very, very dangerous and cumbersome to work. In the end of this book, it's really fascinating, the gas explosions that we had at Beaver Park. We had 25 fire companies there, and you got those dead-end streets, Roosevelt Ave and Lafayette, things like that. Now, a truck taking care of a fire, the first house down, Lafayette Ave, that street is blocked. Heaven forbid now, there's a medical emergency down at the end. And also, the fact that the hydrant line is a dead end. If there's a problem, you can't get fire from the next street over and stuff. So that's just all I wanted to say about that from a historical perspective. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further, I think you said there was another member of the public, Josh?
Yep, Mr. Bradstreet.
Okay. And identify yourself for the record.
Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. I'm old. I've lived in Danvers all my life. Some of the people who are moving into town have very little knowledge about what this town was like, how it grew. We need someone who pays attention. I was disappointed to hear that not in the town, but disappointed to hear that the town wasn't aware about a decision that was made many years ago, which is now being ignored in a sense. Having said that, not all of us have a computer or use a computer, are computer literate. As far as getting information out to the public, every house has an electric meter, or every building has one house. Everyone gets an electric bill. I see nothing wrong, and I brought it up before. If there's information that the town as a whole and neighborhoods should be aware, can't the town put a filler in the bill? If the public refuses or doesn't care about it, they can ignore it. I don't care about the money. The money is part of it. The idea is it's the cost of doing business, and we want business in this town to be responsible and fair to everyone. Put a filler in the bill, and everybody knows. To me, it's a small expense. We'll spend money on some things. To me, it's a simple way to solve the problem, so that everyone is aware that they can sign up without having to go to a computer and looking for it, that they can sign up for a notification. Again, if it comes to a house with an electric meter, they know, or should know. If they refuse or choose to ignore it, and shame on them for bringing up later on, I didn't know. Well, you were given the information on such and such a time, whatever. That was when you should have brought it forward. It's trying to be proactive, not reactive. I listened to some of what's said. I like people asking questions and getting good answers. Now, whether I'm asking a good question or I'm getting a good answer, it's not important. To me, it's important that the town knows, everyone who lives in this town knows, business, resident, knows what's going on in this town. And a simple filler in the electric bill would be one way. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you. Just with respect to that question, question to town staff, and this is coming from someone who, we still get our electric bill in the mail. I know, a lot of people do it online. And so, and I do see the fillers that we get on occasion, that come in there. Is that, has that something that planning and economic development has ever included in terms of the filler? If anything, just to say, if you want a town update, here's how to get it, or here's who to contact if you'd like to be kept informed of these, of things that are coming down the pike.
So planning and economic development has not used that, but yes, the town does, we piggyback on existing bills to do that. So that's something that we do. We can easily do a mailing and to notify people about Notify Me. We do know that it's true that many people don't either. It's usually they choose not to use a computer, but almost everybody has a phone, and a lot of the time that's actually how the people that I end up talking with end up getting notified is through their phone. So, in short, we can do both of those. We do it already. We have not had a recent mailer, meaning our division. But that's typically we really wouldn't send out a mailer on that quarterly basis or I guess it would be because project by project you basically get it in and then it's in 1 month you're hearing it. It's just not fast enough to plan around those. So people that actually want to be informed actually need to get engaged to enact change.
Right. But I guess that all being said is if there's a way that town staff can look into even just providing people maybe a further opportunity to request information And even if, let's say, you don't have easy access to a computer, here's the number that you can call if you have questions, or even to get on a phone, text alert or something like that. So that, so you're not asking, so at least it gives them the ability to at least make that engagement, because I think people are not necessarily aware of all the, of the information that is available. And so, so I think that if there's a way that we can sort of taking Mr. Bradstreet's comments into consideration, I think that would make sense. Just to look into.
Agreed.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Any further public comments or questions?
Looks like we have one more.
Sure. Okay. Let's go to the podium and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, Andrea Brancato. I live on Pine Street, and I'm here with some of the neighbors because we want to know a little bit more about what's going on. I know you're giggling. You think it's kind of funny that people that are older, my age and older, maybe they don't know, maybe they don't have a way of communicating using the computer. There's a lot of baby boomers now, a lot, and they're in town, they're upset. They didn't know about a lot of the changes that are going on. The gentleman that spoke earlier with the hat, he's absolutely right. Like, stuff is happening everywhere in this town, and nobody really knows what's happening. I mean, I drove downtown, and I see this big, huge building erected, and I'm trying to figure out where people are gonna go. Like, there's not enough space. They're looking to build on our street, on Pine Street, on a building that was making light bulbs for years, and I don't know if they're gonna check that soil, but guarantee they're gonna find a few things. So I know this maybe is not the time and place for all of this, but we really need to be able to inform the public. People like getting their light bill in the mail, because you get confused. There's so much stuff that comes through your email or on your phone, you get busy, we don't know what's going on. And we want to be informed. I just signed up for Notify Me, so I'm going to be notified now.
Good.
But we really need to have direct communication, and we have to understand that we're all not like some of the people in the room. I mean, I am, because I'm in business, but a lot of people aren't. And I don't want to poo-poo them and act like they're silly because maybe they don't have, communication, a lot of these older people. But they're in the community, they pay their taxes, and now they have all these buildings going up and houses and on land that they didn't even know was happening. So we really need to stay connected to the community. I walk down my sidewalk a lot, and there's always trees that are growing into the sidewalk, and I see old people walking on it. Before you guys make plans to build something, go down and look at it, at least. I mean, I don't know if you are or not, but if you went down and you looked at some of these spaces, you may say, someone might get a little bit upset if we build here, right? Just by looking at the traffic pattern and trying to figure out if we have enough, EMTs and service people to actually help people if something happens. So I'm very worried, and I'm not the only one. And believe me, the people in Danvers are gonna speak up, because there's a whole bunch of people that maybe are not here tonight, but there's flyers going out, the community's getting together, and you're gonna see that more people are gonna show up. Wait till the next meeting. I'm not kidding. So you really need to start to consider some of this. It's getting me upset, like just thinking, hey, maybe do we put a flyer out? Don't we put a flyer out so these people be involved? Absolutely, they should know if someone is putting a humongous structure next to their house, because it's going to change traffic, it's going to change environment, and people haven't even talked about the rats that are going to come out of the ground, building all over the place. So that's all I have to say, but I really think you need to start to thinking about the community and communicating with people.
Thank you. And I just want to add, just in terms of in terms of comments, I mean, I'm participating remotely here tonight, but in terms of, I don't think light in terms of any comments that people are making in terms of ability to get documentation by mail as opposed to computer. As I mentioned, I get my, I still get my utility bill in the mail, and I am, and all of us here are invested and concerned in, have a concern about our town, our community, and about our community members. I grew up in Danvers. I was born here. I grew up on Water Street, not that far from a Crease and Cook leather tannery. So I'm aware of effects of industry with respect to residences. So without going any further into that, but I just wanted to, just to point, just to say that I hear your points, and I won't say anything further on that. Is there any further comments or questions from members of the public with respect to our subdivision rules and regulations?
It seems like there's another comment from the public.
Sure. Yep.
Last one, I promise. Mark Goff there,
You
181
identify
Pine.
yourself for the record.
I would request that when we get into this next topic, that you guys speak our language and not your language. A lot of inside baseball going on here tonight. So I would like to understand how the public can get access to the subdivision rules, regulations, the zoning bylaw amendments, all these policies. How do we get access to it so we can read it and understand it? We're here to learn tonight because we're here to push back.
Yep.
So I just ask you speak our language. Thank
Okay.
you.
Fair question. Josh, Ryan, where can the public locate this information with respect to subdivision regulations and the zoning bylaw?
I mean, it'll be on the website tomorrow if it's not up there now, but be on the planning website, the Planning and Economic Development
Yeah,
website.
the Planning and Economic Development. We can also double post it on the planning board site, so there's no confusion. All of the amendments will be up there. We're going to talk tonight. We're opening up the hearing. Things could change throughout the course of the hearing. This might be open for more, certainly more than one meeting. But the idea is that whenever there are changes that are voted on by the board, we would put those changes up as well. But we have to make them available. So it's not like anyone's trying to hide them. Many people have already requested them, paper copies. We've given it to them. Some people have requested digital folder copies. We have to give these to you. So we're not trying to do anything. I'm happy to give it to, we can speak after.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I just
very
think
much,
Mr.
Andrew.
Bradstreet's idea, as well-intended, is just not practical, because putting a flyer in every month's electric bill as to what's on the agenda for not just this board, but the ZBA, the Concom, and maybe the Select Board, is a cost, and that cost would be passed on to the taxpayers, and we have selectmen present, so maybe you can ask them to change the law at the town meeting and put that in the budget. But anytime you put a flyer in a electric bill, there could be 30,000 electric bills. There could be 40,000 electric bills that go out by mail. So who's going to pay the cost of that? And by the time you receive it, the meeting might have been last night, or by the time you open your mail. So it's really not practical, as we said, to do it by mail. I'm sorry that, and I understand that not everyone has access to a computer. There are computers at the library. There's access on, cell phones. If someone wants to be informed, it's in the town website. Everything we're doing is public. It's on the town website. Our agenda's there. Everything is there. I think going backwards to doing things by paper, I think you occasionally see something in your electric bill, maybe once a quarter for a charity or something like that, but to require the town electric department to pay stuffers to add an additional piece of paper where we're trying to get away from paper, there could be tens of thousands of electric bills that go out. You might have a 4-family house, and you're going to have four meters and a common meter. It's just that, I think, while it may have worked 10, 20 years ago, we're using the computers, we're using the town website. The information is out there. the information is provided, and I appreciate your attendance in coming to this meeting. We don't want to make this confrontational. Remember, we're volunteers, we're lifelong, or, you know, they're about, not all of us, but I'm a lifelong resident of the town, and we volunteer our time and effort to, you know, have these meetings, and we've been appointed by the town manager to be in this role. So, you know, we need to be, I think, I don't know why this has turned confrontational, but I know your item is going to come up, but not at today's agenda. It will be coming up in the future, and that's your opportunity to comment on that, and you will be informed of it. So that's all I have. Lou, I would call the question so we can move on. We're going to be at midnight at this point, so we can get a vote on this. It's already almost, you know, 8:30 on this second item.
Okay, very good. All right, I think we have a motion to, I think we have a motion to call the question.
No,
Close the hearing.
we need a motion to close the public hearing. Lou?
Move to close the public hearing.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion to close the public hearing. First was by Jim. Who was the second?
Mike.
Mike? Sorry.
Mike. Okay, very good. It's been moved, been seconded. All in favor of closing the public hearing. I'm going to do a roll call. Jean Hartnett,
Yes.
Jim Sears,
Yes.
Tim Spittle,
Yes.
Mike DeCoulis,
Yes.
and Lou George says yes. Okay. Okay. Moving on to the actual item in terms of the subdivision rules and regulations. I'd like to entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we vote on the subdivision rules and regulations as they are written.
Okay. Very good. It's been moved by Jean. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that by Tim Spittle?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, very good. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, then we'll have a vote on it. I will do a roll call vote, either yay, nay, or abstain. Jean?
Yay.
Jim?
Nay.
Tim?
Yay.
Mike?
Yay.
And Lou George says yay. So it passes 4-1. Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the comments and for the discussion today. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item. Town staff, Josh and Brian, is there anything further we need with respect to the subdivision rules?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay. Very good. Okay. So the third item, Trask Lane, partial release of covenant. It's a request for a partial release of a covenant established on August 28, 1972, which is associated with a definitive subdivision plan entitled, quote, Proposed Access to Folly Hill Development, Danvers, Massachusetts, end quote, and dated June 2nd, 1972, and also known as Trask Lane, Danvers, Mass. Okay. So this is an item I believe that town staff has some, I believe this has an update about this.
Yeah, wouldn't get too much into this item in that they did ask for, so the applicant did submit an email for a request of a continuance, this item for the next meeting, so I think that's all we should probably say at this time on the item.
Okay.
And it was the request
Very
to
good.
continue this item to our next regularly scheduled meeting on January 14th, 2025.
Okay, great. Okay, very good. Okay, so it's been, I guess then in this case since it has been, since the applicant has requested a continuance and we don't want to discuss the merits of the matter further, I'd like to entertain a motion. Jean, can you make a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion we continue Trask Lane partial release of covenant to the next meeting, January 14th, 2025.
Second.
Okay, very good. It's been moved by Jean. There's a second, and with that by Mike.
Mike, yep, thanks.
Okay, very good. It's been moved and seconded. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote, beginning with Jean,
Yes.
Jim Sears,
Yes.
Tim Spittle,
Yes.
Mike DeCoulis,
Yes.
and Lou George says yes. Okay, so it's been continued to our next meeting of January 14th, 2025. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on to our next agenda item. This is a public hearing on the zoning bylaw amendments. And today we'll be receiving an overview from staff of the proposed zoning bylaw amendments for the special town meeting of February 3rd, 2025. The public hearing is regarding several updates to the following sections of the zoning bylaw for purposes of clarity, consistency, and reflection of current Massachusetts regulations. Section 4, site plan review. Section 7, dimensional requirements. Section 10, off-street parking standards. Section 18, character-based zoning districts. Section 27, groundwater protection district bylaw. Section 30, special permits. Section 31, floodplain overlay district. Section 37, sign bylaw. New Section 38, outdoor lighting standards. Section 40, definitions. Table 1, table of allowable uses. Table 1A, civic space districts. Schedule of uses. Table 2, table of dimensional requirements, residential. The hearing also includes the following proposed zoning map amendments. One is to include 141 Pine Street, map 50, parcel 87, and 146 Pine Street, map 50, parcel 98, into the Tapleyville overlay district. This would not change the underlying zoning district, which would remain residential 1, R1. The other zoning map amendment includes moving certain town-owned parcels from civic space institutional CS Inst to civic space open space CSOS zoning districts, and the inclusion of other town-owned parcels into the civic space open space CSOS zoning district. Okay, is there a, I believe Brian Zakelli, will you be presenting?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, why don't you identify yourself and go ahead.
Sure. Hi, my name is Brian Zakelli. I'm the planning director here in Danvers. Tonight's agenda, we're going to talk very kind of briefly about why we're here for special town meeting, and then we're going to have a discussion. We're going to open up to the public. We would most likely not be, or we'll definitely not be voting on anything this evening in order to keep it open so that later on, if there are any changes, whether throughout this public process or from other boards and committees that would be potentially weighing in, we would potentially incorporate those comments. So no votes this evening. We're just kind of try to introduce and have a discussion. So the main reason that we are here is that we are afforded typically once a year to change the zoning here in Danvers. There's new state law, there's new case law that we have to incorporate into our zoning bylaw. Another thing over time is we find that there are certain inconsistencies when additions were made, so we clean up those as we see them, as they become problematic. So this special town meeting in February is not meant to be kind of major policy change. There are town meetings when that is the case. There are a few minor policy changes that we're going to highlight this evening, but just to be clear, this is not one of those town meetings that we plan on doing any major policy changes. And if we find there to be extremely major policy changes, which at the moment there aren't, but sometimes throughout that process, people can put in things that potentially could be inconsistent. So this is where we are at the moment. I think since there are there's a lot of different sections that we're touching, I think if I went through the entire, I'm going to go to the board here. I think if I went through the entire thing and then go back, I don't know if we would get the best discussion or comments from even the board. I was thinking of going through each section, and then when we're finished with that section, open it up for comments and questions, and then kind of keep moving on, paying attention to, as Jim said, not being here till midnight. Because this is not our only opportunity. This will be continued to the next time and potentially further. Okay, sorry for the long-winded introduction.
I think that approach makes sense, and also keeping in mind too that any, that that certainly if we cover, let's say, section, we've had questions about section 31 today. At our next meeting, we may talk certainly about section 31 again.
Yes, for people that were either unable to make it tonight, we would go through the same sequence as well. Thank you for bringing that up.
Sounds good, thank you.
These are all the sections that we're going to be talking about this evening. Some of these are, frankly, very quick. They're very, I'm going to go through it. Some of them are the opposite of controversial, things we have to do that everyone agrees with. Everyone wants flood insurance, right? Yeah, we got to do this in order to get flood insurance, for example. There are others that are going to be, not so simple. So we have a floodplain bylaw. So local floodplain our local floodplain overlay district has been established as a federal requirement for any homeowner to receive flood insurance. So the federal government makes us have this floodplain bylaw that essentially outlines where the floodplains are in town and what your risk for flooding is. From time to time, those maps are updated, and we need to reflect those current maps. So if we don't reflect, as I said just earlier, if we don't reflect these current maps, people would not be able to get flood insurance through FEMA. So we're simply updating this bylaw to reflect these newly created FEMA maps. The bylaw that we have, we already have one on file within our zoning bylaw. This has actually already been pre-reviewed by FEMA as of 2 weeks ago. So they've given us a soft approval of everything looks good. The actual maps panel numbers, which is actually the main thing that we're changing, we're referencing the right maps. Those won't get issued till mid-January, so we will reference those new numbers when we get them in January. That is the end-all, be-all for this change for the floodplain. It's as easy as it's going to come for me this evening, so hopefully there are not too many questions.
Okay.
Nothing
Very
from
good.
the board.
Any questions from any members of the board?
I think I scared them just a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to keep moving because let's take the time that we need to take for other things and move through the things that we don't need to take time on.
Fair enough.
Signage. So, very exciting topic. So we amended the sign bylaw at February of this year, town meeting, moving the sign requirements located in various zoning districts all into one section, section 37. Under the current situation, signs are actually regulated by two separate sets of rules now. We have section 37, which is all of our signage, but there are zoning regulations of the planning board. So these are outside of the zoning that actually regulate the signage downtown. So now all we're doing here is taking those zoning regulations from outside of zoning, bringing them into zoning to memorialize them so that when people, when applicants come in, they know everything. If you want to talk about signage, you go to that chapter, everything that you need is right there. You don't need to go to the planning board zoning regulations that's outside of the zoning in order to find that. So more of a cleanup, no language is changing, not a word is changing. It's putting those regulations that are outside inside the zoning. The board, are there any questions from the board? Wonderful. Anyone from the
Any
audience?
questions from members? No?
So it's just all going into section 37 of the bylaws?
Yep, this is a public hearing.
Yeah, sorry. So no one can hear you unless you're at the mic, but the question was whether, where now is all the signage regulations in the same section. So now they are going out of regulations and they're actually our zoning bylaw. So they are now going to be a bylaw. Typically, when you hear the word regulations, that's going to be outside of zoning. So you have a zoning bylaw and you have like rules and regulations that are outside of it.
Brian, what would be the practical effect?
Practical effect
of that
is
distinction?
it'd be easier for an applicant to navigate the bylaw.
Okay.
You're not looking in two places for signage.
Got it. Okay.
All right, I'm just going to keep moving.
Good. Yep.
Outdoor
Very
lighting
good.
standards. So this was kind of so some of our bylaw changes are based upon resident feedback. Some of them are based upon things that we noticed that we try to bounce off the board. This is one of those resident feedback ones. I've been here for 2 years in January, and there have been a number of complaints, typically from commercial buildings usually they're doing a whole new LED light overhaul, and now I have a light that's like literally shining into my bedroom and I can't sleep at night and it's 4 a.m. So we get these calls, and it's really hard to
Brian,
tell.
just to clarify, this
Yes.
this is a complaint about commercial buildings. You said it's a complaint by commercial buildings.
Thank you. You are correct. I misspoke. This is typically a complaint by residential, a residential that abuts a commercial building. And the commercial building goes through some retrofit, and, all of a sudden now this new lighting for 20 years has been fine, but now it's a problem. We don't have any regulations on the books for outdoor light spillage or light pollution or anything related to that. So we reviewed various model bylaws and other municipal laws, and proposed a bylaw that's like a compilation of that. We had given the planning board a 38-page outdoor lighting bylaw, and they kind of hated it a little bit. I'm being facetious, but it was just, they're like, this is too cumbersome. This is not going to work for us. This is going to, seems like more of a headache for enforcement. We've pared that down to about 7 pages that we feel is focusing more on the outputs, which was the main comment that we had received was, let's not worry about how many lumens and how many foot candles is in this specific area. Is there light pollution going over into my property? Just like focus on the problem rather than what's kind of going.
Brian,
So
can I just,
yes.
Brian, can I just interrupt you just quickly? When
Please.
you're mentioning this feedback, this is with respect to the land use summit that was done this past summer. Was that right?
In the
Yes.
fall.
So, yes, thank you. So the land use summit was the planning board and the zoning board where we talked about potential bylaws for the upcoming town meeting. And that was the major focus, or that was the major feedback that we heard about outdoor lighting was like, way too complex, please stop, make this different. So we overhauled that. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it. And we feel we've captured what the board was looking for.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Questions from the board with respect to the lighting, the outdoor lighting standards. Go to the pared down approach here.
I, for one, appreciate
Any
the
questions
simplification because I was one of the loudest voices saying it was too complicated, so thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks, Tim. Anything, Jean, any questions from,
No, I'm good with
respect to
it.
the lighting? Okay. Mike DeCoulis, any questions with respect to lighting?
No, I think I'm good, thanks, Lou.
Okay. How about Jim? Jim, do you have any
All
questions
set with
or
lighting,
concerns
thank
with
you.
respect to outdoor lighting?
All set.
Okay, very good. Thanks. Okay. All right, unless there's any questions or comments from members of the public, Brian, you can go ahead.
We got one comment.
Sure.
Bill McKenzie, 34 Harbor Street. Does this also include all the streetlights in Danvers?
No.
Got my answer.
Okay, thank you.
Technically, I was not on record saying that with my head shaking no. Municipal, so we are, hate to say it, but we are not, we do not have to hold ourselves to the zoning bylaw. But typically, in this case, you probably wouldn't want us to. Meaning the streetlights that are in downtown, you probably want them the way that they're going to be implemented. One more, yes, of course.
John Bouchard from Crestline Circle. If an existing manufacturing facility has lights lighting up a loading dock, and we're about to build 3 brand-new condominiums, that those lights will now shine into there. They're not even there yet, but they're going to be there. Does this cover that? Would it prevent
Yeah, probably.
either the buildings from being built because the lights are going to be shining into them? Or would they tell the people at the industrial plant, your loading dock can't have lights on it?
Probably the second one.
So what would happen, so yes, this bylaw would affect, once it goes into effect, it would affect everybody. What this bylaw would do would make that industrial complex have to have specific lighting that shines down and cannot trespass onto over the property line. So it is possible to do it, definitely, but they would have to essentially just shine the light in a specific direction. And yeah, any other, someone did mention is if this is going to be online as well. So this presentation in PDF and PowerPoint will also be on this, it'll be right next to all of the language of the actual changes as well. So just for everyone to know that.
And Brian, they would go on to the planning and economic development sort of subpart of the town's website?
Correct. We're going to double post on planning and economic development and the planning board. So if you go to either one of those pages, we will have all of the amendments as well as this PowerPoint presentation.
Great, thank you.
One more question from the audience.
Sure.
Bill McKenzie, 34 Harbor Street. My neighbor's light shines into my living room now. How do we deal with that? And who enforces it?
Brian?
Yeah, so typically how we've been doing this without even having a bylaw on file, what we have been doing, so we work late on Thursdays. We typically see what's going on. We obviously do other days as well, but Thursdays are the easiest day, especially during the winter, to see what's going on light-wise. So if someone is doing this now, the fact that we've put this in the paper as a legal ad, the zoning amendments, they are in effect until they get voted down. I know that sounds very strange, but because we've already notified the public about any zoning change, this is Mass General Law, that once you notify through the legal ad, which was 2 weeks ago, all of these bylaws are potentially in effect. So anyone that goes forward, this was, I don't know when they did this. It was certainly more than 50 or 60 years ago. This was to obviously prevent people from when a proposed change is happening, so then everyone like rushes in to try to do a grab of certain zoning before it changes, for example. So I don't know if I answered your question fully. Okay. Who enforces it? So this would, if it's in the zoning bylaw, if we get complaints, so we issue fines, we issue letters saying, it's based upon information and belief from the time that we went there on Thursday at 7 p.m. We saw lights going into this, please direct them in a different way. If we see this again, we will issue a $300 fine per, I write this a lot, so yeah, I get it. It comes out pretty quick. But, so yeah, that's how we do it. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. I'm glad we're not talking about indoor lighting.
Any further questions?
Yeah. I guess I'm going to keep moving.
Keep on moving.
Kennels, pet daycare, dogs, always a sensitive subject, doesn't matter what it is. Whenever you talk about dogs in any community in the Commonwealth, there are always lots of questions and lots of care about what's going on with the dogs. Okay. In one sentence, what the main change that is happening, most of this is a cleanup, but the main change that actually is happening is that we define a kennel as 3 dogs or more. So you're allowed to have a personal kennel, meaning 3 dogs. You're allowed to have 3 dogs. You're not breeding them. You're not a commercial business. You're just a normal person with 3 dogs. You're allowed to do that. When you get a 4th dog, you're coming to the Zoning Board of Appeals to ask for this dog to be part of your house. It's a little strange. So it turns out the state actually has very well-defined definitions of what kennels are. And there's commercial kennels, non-commercial kennels. So all we're doing is adopting the state definitions for kennels. We're not changing where and when you can have a kennel, like that's not changing in terms of the residential districts. What people wanted, the main question that we got was, are you now going to allow commercial kennels in residential districts? That was like the main question. And the answer is no, we're not doing any changes in terms of the use of any of these. The only thing that's changing is that a kennel now is defined as 4 dogs or more rather than 3. This is what is the proposal. So the proposal is a person in the residential zone. So we're not talking about commercial zones. Generally, you can do veterinary clinics and commercial boarding, commercial breeding, that type of thing in commercial zones generally. In the residential zones, this is what's going to happen. And again, it is not changing from what is current practice. So a personal kennel that's now going to be 4 dogs, you'll be able to do that by right in your home. Before it was 3, now it's 4. To do any type of commercial boarding, so that means just normal pet daycare. Someone just has an at-home pet daycare business, they still need to come for, we're still making this, we're not changing this. You still need to come for a special permit. So it can be denied, you're asking a board for permission to do that. Again, that's not changing. And then all the commercial stuff, veterinary kennels, that's not allowed in any residential district. So I want to make very clear, nothing is changing in terms of where you can do what. The only thing that's changing is 4 dogs instead of 3. Any questions from the board or the public? Yes, good. There's no way I could get through a dog conversation without one. So like that would have been a first in like 15 years. So.
Could whoever has the question go and identify themselves and pose the question?
Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. In a sense, to some people, dogs are like rabbits. They breed. So if you have 4 dogs, maybe 1, 2, or 3 of them happen to be females that haven't been altered, they have a litter. What do you do with the litter if you can only have 4 dogs and you now have 8 or whatever? Is there a time limit for them to be disposed of one way or another? I mean, I like dogs. I don't have one, but if I had a large litter, they're part of a family, part of my family, not mine, but part of a family. How do you handle that?
Move to Maine.
Sure. So what you're talking about is what happens when someone has a personal kennel, but they really kind of turn into a commercial kennel. So, we're not out here looking for this stuff, first of all. Let's start there. Really, we don't go out looking for any infractions, if you want to know the truth. That is not generally what we do. When we're out on site visits, we clearly look to see what's happening, but we don't just go out to search for stuff. That's not what our department is paid to do, frankly. So I think if we saw a case where someone was a personal kennel and every year their personal kennel has puppies, we'll figure that out if you want to. I don't know. How about that? That's the short answer. Is I don't really know, but we will figure it out. I mean, that seems like a one-off problem. You're talking about someone who's willfully breaking the law, and that we would, eventually find them.
Thank you, Brian.
All right.
Any further questions either from the board or members of the public on this one? Okay.
All right.
This one's.
Well, that's basically, this is the use table. We're adding those.
For downtown.
So the definitions, this was in downtown. So we already talked about the residential districts, and it's the same thing, that you would still require a special permit for anything really. You would require a special permit for a veterinary clinic or anything commercial related. And then a P stands for that it's permitted, that you can do it by right. It's hard to not care about the top here, because that's not changing, meaning that's other uses. We're just the bottom here. But again, you can see that so this domestic charitable corporation kennel, that's like your typical MSPCA or other type of nonprofit organization. So that, you would still need a special permit to do that in the downtown. So again, not trying to change policy, it's just that 4-3 thing.
Got it. Okay. Very good.
Okay, so that was it on dogs. That was amazing, if that was true.
Yep.
Okay, I'll take it. Let's just, yeah. Okay. Garages. This was kind of a weird inconsistency that we had between the definition of garage and the use table. So the definition of garage said that it had to be on a residential parcel, which doesn't make a lot of sense because you can have garages on commercial parcels. They're there all the time. If anything, you probably have more garages on commercial parcels and larger garages on commercial parcels. So so this is the proposed change that just we're taking out located on a residential parcel. And what we're putting in is that right now you can do a 40 by 30 3-car garage. That's what any normal residential house, if you have enough space to actually put, 40 by 30 is huge. But if you have enough space, you could put, by right, you could put a 40 by 30 3-car garage. Right now, you can ask for larger than that. We do get them sometimes in front of ZBA. Right now, you can ask for larger garages in the R2 and the R3, the larger zone, so you can go above 4. But for some reason, in the commercial and industrial zones, you're not even allowed to apply for a 4-car garage. So you're basically allowing someone who has kind of a big property to get to the possibility of getting a 4-car garage, but a commercial property in a commercial zone that needs a very large garage can't even apply. So we thought this was kind of a no-brainer. Like, let's just allow them to. We're not saying that they're going to get they're going to get it, but at least let's allow them to get into the ZBA to at least apply for doing a 4-car or an oversized garage. So we thought this was kind of a nothing, and then it just made sense for most parcels.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Sounds
sorry,
good. Any questions from the board on this item? Brian, were there any questions from the board?
No, all clear.
Okay. Any questions from members of the public?
Not on this one.
Just a question, and Brian, this might have come up during the land use summit. I think there was a question about like commercial garages and such. This revision doesn't do anything that would curtail someone who's running like a commercial garage shop, would it? Or
this does the opposite. Yeah, this does the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
This allows a commercial operation to apply the ability to apply for an oversized garage.
Okay.
So it's expanding. It's expanding the property right.
Okay. And there have to be certainly garages that are beyond four vehicles currently in commercial zones.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is it was previous to the zoning change that prevented it.
Okay. Got it. Okay. All right. Sounds good. I don't have any further questions on this one for now.
All right. Moving on to groundwater. So groundwater protection areas, they consist of aquifers and wells and recharge areas that warrant our protection because for drinking water or other purposes. And we are updating the bylaw to reflect the new maps issued by the Commonwealth. So this was the previous map is this one. There's an area here in the southwest, and then an area in the northeast. This was the reason why this area was protected. It was mainly because of it was because of a well in Wenham that has gone offline. It's not being used. Mm-hmm. So because of that well in Wenham going offline, this district got taken out of the state level map. So now our map will just include the southwest portion. These maps are issued by the Commonwealth, and we reference them for groundwater protection, we're updating the map to include the new change. Back to you, Lou.
Good. Any question? Yep. Any questions from members of the board with respect to this this proposed amendment?
No. We've gone
Okay,
over this
very good.
before, just so the audiences knows that we've looked at this a
Yes.
couple times.
Yeah.
This isn't our first
I
time.
think it's the third time. I think
Third
it's the
time, we've
third
seen
time.
it, so it's pretty straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification, Jim. I appreciate it. That's good. Any questions from members of the public at all?
There's one, yes, Mr. Bradstreet.
Sure. Please, Mr. Bradstreet, go ahead.
Thanks.
Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. What's been in the news lately are forever chemicals. How does that come into play with these water sources? The way they describe it in the media, that it's a slowly creeping death to all of us because they don't break down for a very long time. They're saying that it's in the food, everything. I heard one person say they had the blood checked and there's contamination in their blood. So for water source that we are going to rely on, how would that come into play with this? Or would it?
I would only
Brian,
say,
can you offer?
yeah, I would only say that this now one area is going to have heightened scrutiny for the types of chemicals you're talking about. So, but that's kind of where it ends, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you. Yep. Any additional, thanks, Brian. Any additional questions or comments from members of the public on this this particular provision?
Does not appear so.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to the civic space districts.
Civic space districts, the use table and map changes. So this is a lot of map changes, actually, for well, just in general, for a town meeting. It's a lot of map changes.
And for members of the public, Brian, could you just briefly describe like what is a civic space and sort of how that, again, just for folks who may be tuning in and sort of hearing the phrase, they haven't heard the phrase very often.
Sure. So civic space, generally what you would think of as town-owned land, just generally. That's not always the case at all, but just if you're thinking about civic space in terms of how it's zoned, it's typically town-owned land. So it's obviously, where town hall and schools and playgrounds, but it also could be a lot of open space. What we have found is that there are a decent amount of properties that are zoned institutional, civic space institutional. So there are a couple different types of civic space. All of the schools, for example, are civic space institutional because they have a building on them and it makes sense in terms of, town hall, the library. These are all institutional civic spaces that should probably be treated differently from actual civic open space. You look on the map, though, it's all green. Everything's green. So there's no real distinction in terms of the color, but there are, so what this is doing is taking a certain these parcels that are almost all playgrounds and open space, existing open space that the only structure that's on any of these are typically playgrounds. These buildings are not on these properties. So what we're doing is taking out the civic space institutional use for these and changing them to civic space open space, because that's how they should be treated. That's how they should be viewed. Meaning that we can't say that it can never be built on, meaning it's town land. But the idea is that there should be some almost like enshrining of that open space that people get used to and want to keep it there for a reason. So this kind of, it's a way to kind of slightly nudge that playground will hopefully be a playground or open space forever, or at least as long as it's zoned this way. So we only took parcels that that really were like open space and playgrounds to take them out of the institutional open space and put them in the civic space open space zone.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the board with respect to this provision? Anybody?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay. How about any questions or comments from members of the public? No, I don't think so.
What we
Hey. Oh,
that's
we have one.
the water thing. Let's talk about the water thing and just. Well, does anyone have any questions on civic space? It looks like it's a no. Okay, great. Yeah, why don't you, yeah, please.
Susan Gauthier, 181 Pine Street. Regarding the water, so we have all these buildings being built in town, blah, blah, blah. How much water are we actually getting from there, and do we have enough to keep building? Thank you.
Okay.
So I don't have the breakdown in terms of, so we get our water from a number of different sources. Let me start off by saying, like, I am not the person to talk about water. Let me just be very clear. I can talk about a lot of things, but not that. From what I understand, the real issue has to do with the fact that we draw water from the Ipswich River. Because we draw water from the Ipswich River, we are bound to this agreement that I don't even think is actually active anymore, that we need to renegotiate. So it's a little bit of a stretch to say that we don't have enough water. It's that the agreement that we are currently in with for the Ipswich River water status, it prevents us from well, it prevents it does not necessarily say that it's not that we don't have enough water, it's that this agreement that needs to be renegotiated is somewhat limiting us. So I know that that's a very weird and like cryptic answer. The reason why is because we're talking about 25 years of issues. The one thing I can say is that as it relates to the downtown zoning at least, there was a build-out analysis done for the downtown zoning in terms of, if we did the max number of units that was allowed by right and went through the whole downtown and built out that downtown, which would never happen actually, meaning it's not like every single parcel would go to the max and everyone. We did that analysis with the engineering department, and and we all came to the conclusion that yes, it is possible to zone this and for us to move forward, for us to be okay, for whatever that means. So yes, there was homework done at least for downtown. That's as far as much as I know. I do think there's a very large, extremely important conversation that has to happen about water that, yes, it has to do with development, but really when it comes down to it, the town has to provide water for its residents and businesses. So that is on us to provide. So that's where the buck stops. So if there's an issue, it is us. It is, that we need to fix.
Thank you, Ryan. And thanks for the questions.
Sure.
Brian.
Are we on? Yes. Are we on to the last?
I just had a quick question.
Yes.
Why is Tapley not listed on this, Tapley Park, but like Plains Park is? I didn't know if there was a difference on the last one, right before this.
I think it's already.
Oh, okay. I was just curious.
Yeah. I think it's already listed.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Brian. Thanks for the question, Mike.
All right. Tapleyville, 141 to 146, that everyone's been waiting here since 7 o'clock and it's 9:10. So here we are. So 141 and 146 Pine Street is an area that's located in the residential 1 district, the R1. So the existing uses on these two sites have been industrial or commercial for well over 100 years. Started out throwing coal, like they were delivering, it was a coal operation, coal storage and delivery. And pretty much has been landscaping and personal services. Personal services, nail salon, hair salon, I believe a tattoo might have been in there at some point many years ago, but that lapsed, so now they can't go back. But basically, it's been now two types, landscaping and personal services in the residential 1 zone, in the R1 zone. Residents desire businesses to remain specifically in this area. But most businesses are actually unable to operate due to this being in the R1 district. So this is where the issue is that the Zoning Board of Appeals is not, according to the zoning bylaw, we are not allowed to give use variances in residential districts. So what that means is that the only businesses, not on these two sites, that means that the only businesses that these properties can do is literally landscaping and personal services, because that's what's been going on there, and they have that protection. It's called it used to be called grandfathered, pre-existing non-conforming use. That's what that is. It's a use that existed prior to zoning. The problem is they can't do anything else. So what the problem that we are having, so everyone thinks that the owners of the property have been calling us saying, hey, you need to rezone this, we want to build housing. Like, that is not the case at all. What's happening over the past 2 years since I've been here is that we also review business certificates. So people want to start a business in town, they apply for a business certificate, we make sure they're zoning compliant. So that's a new thing that we've never done before. We've caught a lot of business certificates that were not supposed to be doing that business in specific zones. Call it 10 in 2 years, where we say, nope, you got to apply for a special permit, you can't do this by right. Whereas before, it would just kind of just go through without zoning review. So that's a big change that we're doing. With this, back to this specific property. So we would be getting like business certificates for a masonry company. And everyone's like, well, no one's really going to care if it's a masonry company, but they actually can't really do that. And then that was like on repeat. So someone would be like, it was the owner was just trying to, this landscaping business, they came out, I need a new landscaping business, but the guy does this other thing as well. Well, we found that they were really tied up. When we went further into it, we realized that there were a number of zoning processes that were done in the past that allowed even this landscaping business and the personal services business. But now those processes are not allowed. So where we are now is that because it's in the residential zone and there's a non-conforming use there right now, a commercial use in a residential zone, our bylaw allows an applicant to come to the Zoning Board of Appeals for what's called a finding. It's the lowest bar of review, meaning you only need 3 out of 5. And you can, with a finding, this happened, I want to say 5-6 years ago, that it was trying to go in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals for a 20 unit, maybe something like 20, 25 units. They were able to do that, or they were able to apply because of this finding. A finding means you're going from one non-conforming use, a commercial use, to a different non-conforming use, a 20 or a 30 unit complex. What this would allow, the change to bring it into the Tapleyville, it would cap it at 14 units per acre. So right now there's no maximum because it's this non-conforming use. Right now, again, they're not allowed to operate what they are now, but that gives them a protection. Like I said, they can go for a finding to go from one non-conforming use, a commercial use, to something much larger that with no cap. They could just say, well, we're proposing 40 units here. What this does, bringing it into the Tapleyville, caps it at 14 in terms of 14 units per acre. Right now in the R1, it's about 6, it's 5.8, which is at 7,500. You might have seen, you could get one. The reason why 180 to 180 Pine is at that 7 and 8 is because they're going at 7,500 square foot per unit. That's the density that's allowed. So in the R1, you could do, by right, if you had 1 acre, you could do technically 5 units. It's 5.8, but technically you don't get, it doesn't round up. You can do 5. This would allow it to go up significantly, but they would still need a special permit, no matter what, between now and even if it doesn't get changed, no matter what happens, right now you would still have to have a special permit to get anything more than 4 units. Forget density. Just if it's more than 4, you have to go to the zoning board for the planning board for a special permit. So the triggers for review wouldn't change, meaning 4 units, you're still going in front of a board to ask for permission that could be denied. We thought, we really aimed here to honestly reflect what's on the ground. 100 years it's been a commercial property, it's zoned R1. It's that simple in our mind, in that it doesn't make sense. And if everyone really wants it to be commercial, unless they want it literally to be a landscaping business and some type of personal services, which is a nail salon or a hair salon, those are the only options that any landowner, whoever is, from now into forever, would be able to do. So that's the rationale, behind it. And I think I've said enough.
Just before I ask the board for any questions with respect to the finding, in terms of, so you said, as it currently stands right now, an applicant could request a finding. Would that be that's not to do to do a residential development. That's if they wanted to incorporate some, because it is in R1. So that's just because that's if they wanted to include some business as part of it. Is that correct?
No, so the fact that it's already non-conforming right now,
okay.
the finding they could basically go to any other use, including a large multifamily building, or
I see.
It could be covered.
actually they could apply for anything. They could apply for anything.
I think as long as it's in the use table, right?
Yes, as long as it's in the use table.
So anything in that table you could apply for.
I mean, so far, there's a reason why a lot of these fail miserably, because people try to put 10 pounds of flour in a 5-pound bag. That happens. I wouldn't say it often, but regularly. So it's not like this finding is used very often, but it is a huge benefit actually to landowners in town. If you have a non-conforming property, a non-conforming use. That you actually do, strangely enough, you get a lot of protections to not only keep that use, but to actually change to a different non-conforming use. It is unique to Danvers.
Right, and as you point out, it's an easier standard than the special permit requirement.
That's right.
Yes,
Yeah,
but if it's complicated only by one thing, in the fact that if the proposal is a multifamily, if it's 4 units or more and is a multifamily, the state law allows a simple majority to pass that as well. So if they're doing a residential only, it actually would also be only 3 out of 5. If they were doing a mixed-use property, it depends.
Okay. Got it. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll turn it over to members of the board. Do any of the members of the board have questions about this particular provision?
No questions. I think when we did the Tableville overlay district, I think that it was a miss that we should have included it. I think we were focused on Holton Street primarily, but I think this is a good addition to provide additional uses for that area, which has been used in pretty much an industrial, commercial type way for over 100 years.
Okay. Good. Okay, thank you, Jim. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? No?
Nope.
Gene?
Nope.
Mike? Tim? Nope. Okay. Very good. Anybody, any members of the public who wish to ask a question or make a comment on this proposed amendment?
So, are we to understand that the board is trying to turn this to I'm sorry, Mark Arthur, 181 Pine.
Yep, thanks.
Are we to understand that the board is trying to convert this to a commercial use property to remove that what's it called? Non-conformance?
Yeah, non-conforming.
So that the current owner can't build a 40 or whatever unit condo?
It's not an or. It's not necessarily an or, but
It's not
And Brian, can you go in, can you address Mr. Gauthier's question?
Yeah, I just said, Lou, that it's not necessarily an or, it's not necessarily, moving forward with the Tapley Bill doesn't prohibit, it's not to prohibit anything, it's more to open the possibility, it's to open the commercial, I mean, I think our motivation is to open the commercial opportunities. I think that's the motivation.
So
where
if,
we sit.
so if the town, the board decided to open up the commercial, open up the commercial property options, does that preclude the building of any kind of units, livable units?
No, no.
It does not.
No. But as Brian
This would be an
mentioned,
overlay.
yeah.
They can right now.
Yeah.
R1.
So this is the better of two evils, basically, is what we're talking about.
It's maybe not the language we would use, but.
Can't hear me if I'm not in the mic, but so, well, first of all, these are the types of discussions we want to have, number one. But it's not, I agree with Josh. It's not a either or. It's not a better, worse. We looked at this as a general rule. If you're just looking at a piece of property and it's been commercial for 100 years, generally it should not be in the R1. That's where we're starting. Is that people, not only is it commercial, people want it to remain commercial. So it's certainly easier to make a case in front of a board that like, hey, I'm in the R1, I want to build some housing. So we're trying to say that, well, right now you can do a whole bunch of residential, or not a whole bunch, you can do some residential on this lot. It's a pretty big lot. You can do some residential there. But really, we're trying to promote more business. Right now, we're not at all in this area. So what people are generally concerned with is that the Tapleyville was meant to kind of be this village atmosphere, a little bit of commercial, a little bit of dense housing. Like that was the point of it.
It's like neighborhood business.
Neighborhood business.
Right.
Okay. So, but not as dense as downtown. That was not the intent. That was not the intent of it. But it was to add some units. We're not trying to hide the fact that if it's in the Tapleyville, of course it could have units in it. What we're trying to say is, well, right now, it might be, according to the bylaw, it might be a little bit easier to get more density under the R1. But in reality, in reality, whatever, it's 5-6 years ago, a 20-unit project, crashed and burned miserably because everyone came out and said, we don't want this. So what I'm trying, in terms of why I'm a little dancing a little bit here, is that it's not like it's like a better or not. What we're doing is expanding the amount of opportunity. Yes, we are expanding the amount of residential a little bit, but really there's no chance for this person to expand it commercially at the moment, unless he or she wants to just run some huge landscaping business and be very successful, which might end up being the case for the next 100 years anyway. So we're not here to predict the future. But we do want to promote what residents want. I think from the beginning of the meeting, what I really wanted to kind of jump in and say is that we are all here to implement the law. We're not, so you guys help make the laws. We help you help make the laws, but we're here to implement them. We are not here, we're not here to drive the bus. We're if that makes any sense. Like, you guys drive the bus. It's not supposed to be adversarial. It's supposed to be, we're here to implement your vision. That's what town staff is supposed to do. And boards and we get paid for it. So boards and committees even get it, they're doing this out of not just the kindness of their heart, it's their love for town. So I just wanted to kind of echo a little bit what the board was saying, is that we can understand that development is adversarial. To say otherwise is crazy. But everyone here we want to make right with the law. That's the first part. So even though we might not like how things turn out, we're here still to implement the law. So I want to thank you guys for being here and helping us get a better product. That's what this is about. Okay, I think I've done enough talking for the third time, so. Did anyone
Thank
else?
you,
I'm sure
Brian.
there's some people that would like to say something, so.
Thank you, Brian, for your comments. I appreciate that.
Oh, the acreage on these two sites. I can get that. I don't have it right now, but I can get that before the meeting is done. Someone was asking what the
Great, thank
acreage
you.
of the site was, yes.
It is
Okay.
1.14 acres at 141, and then it is 1.05 acres at 146.
That first number was one
Great.
1.14 acres.
All right, we had,
Great.
yeah, we got one here.
Thank you, Tim.
Yep. Why don't you come on up?
Yeah, coming up, and please introduce yourself and.
Hi, this is Peggy. I'm Peggy Phillip. I live on Hyde Street. So first I have a question about the
Okay.
Chet's. So like literally only a lock shop could go in there from now on? That's my first question.
So it wouldn't, so for Chet's, there was a process that was done, I mean, it's been there for quite a while. I think that site, really anything outside of like a certain square footage, like if it's under 2,500 square feet or over 2,500 square feet, it's a different use. So they are significantly limited. It's not just a locksmith in that specific case because they didn't get permission to specifically do locksmithing. I know how exciting this is. So they have a little bit more play, but the point is not much. It's still in the R1. Like it can't just do any commercial business because it's in a residential zone.
But another business could come in.
Certainly another lock.
Like the landscaping business that could only have landscapers.
It's very similar to this, meaning in terms of that lock shop. Like it's a specific type of commercial business that is I want to say it's retail.
Without saying what it is, security or something
Yeah,
security
like
related or
something
of
to
that.
do specifically with that. So that's kind of the problem is that because once you're non-conforming in a residential zone, once you're performing commercial things in a residential zone, the zoning bylaw wants to get rid of you. It wants to get more compliant as time goes on.
Okay, so it would allow hopefully other smaller business to come in versus, and they're limited to the 4 too with the special permit.
Yes, that's R1.
Okay, so that was my question. But I did want to say, because there was a comment made earlier about, we're not talking about Pine Street today, we're talking about other things. And yes, we're here mainly because of Pine Street, because it all was brought to our attention. But it's a Danvers problem. It's not just Pine Street with the overbuilding. It's a Danvers problem. So a lot of us are here because of Pine Street, but we're here because of the overbuilding. If it wasn't a town issue, then we wouldn't have a leg to stand on. So that's all I wanted to say. Like, I don't know. It's a town issue. It's not just Pine Street.
Thank you.
Anyone who hasn't spoken.
Thank you.
Yes, in the back.
Any further?
We'll get to everybody, but we'll start with people who haven't spoken yet.
And again, if you could identify yourself, for the record. Thanks.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Maury. I actually own 141 Pine Street, and I wanted to, I guess, ask the board to kind of support this. We are in currently a non-conforming situation where we have 4 tenanted 400 square foot spaces that back, I believe in 98 or 99, there was a special permit granted for use of those 4 units, and the actual use is very restrictive. It's very vague to like office, attorney, and somewhere along the way there was a hair salon. Aesthetics came into the mix prior to myself, buying the property. And so as the town has got a new zoning compliance agent, they've discovered that the 2 of the current tenants, as their business certificates come to expire, potentially will not be able to renew those certificates because it's non-conforming. I can't come to the zoning board and ask them for a variance or a finding for a change of use. So it kind of puts those two tenants and the future use of those spaces kind of in peril. And so I don't have any intention to develop the property anytime soon. I run a landscape company out of there, and, you know, I want to try and be compliant with the zoning. It's been industrial use for over 120 years, and, you know, being in a residential use, we're finding now that we have to comply with some setback issues in terms of storage container that's been on the property for 15 years, has now come to light that it has to get moved. And so this zoning compliance agent that the town has got is kind of putting, I guess, some moves in play to kind of bring me compliant with some residential usage, and it just kind of doesn't make sense to me. So having the property that is industrial used in an industrial zone makes the most sense for us going forward. So I hope you support it. Thanks.
Thank you. Further comments or questions from members of the public?
Yeah, Jim Rose, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3. So I just want to be clear. So with this overlay district, did I hear you right? That they'd be able to build 14 units per acre? With
4 by right. Only 4 by right, but they could go up to 14.
4 by right, yep, yeah, because the R1 zoning is 4 pro, okay. All right, so then, that's what's allowed.
Sorry, even in, well, we can both talk, that's fine. Even in the Tapley, so in the Tapleyville, if it's 4, you need a special permit with the planning board, or in the R1, if it's 4, you need a special permit with the place. So that part's not changing.
Okay.
Okay, I think I'm clear.
Okay. Thank you.
Dave McKenna, 383 Andover Street, Precinct 8, Town Meeting Member. I have a question about the non-conforming use principle. My understanding, I just bumped something, I think, sorry. If you're non-conforming use, I thought it gave you a lot more leeway to expand that non-conforming use or even change it with only having to get a finding by the Board of Appeals that your expanded use is not substantially substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. But I always thought it did allow you to change the use if you could get that finding. Is that correct or not?
Yeah.
100%.
Yes.
Okay, so they could expand to another use as long as they convince the 3 out of 5 members of the Board of Appeals that it's not substantially more detrimental. So I think it might make sense to make this change and get them locked into something that's a little bit more regulatory. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. McKenna. Okay, any further members of the public?
Yep. Well,
Oops. Josh or Brian, do we have any other members of the public who
Yes.
wanted to speak up? Okay, sorry, I didn't see them. I didn't see them on my screen. I see them now.
Andrea, Pine Street. I'm concerned because this is our street, obviously. And the gentleman that just came up that owns the lot, I do appreciate it. My family owned a business and I totally get it. You want to expand things and, obviously do business and keep the people in there that are in there. My only concern is either way you go, is the neighborhood going to be notified before you rip everything down and put up all these buildings? Because what will happen moving forward, in 10 or 20 years, it's so congested right there. I don't know who lives on Pine over there. I do. And the traffic sometimes backs up to my house, which is pretty far up. It's hard to get through that light. And then we also have the crosswalk right there too. So people hit the button for the crosswalk. We also have a business across the street where they're delivering meat. A lot of times the trucks come down there and they're trying to get in there. So yeah, 18-wheeler, big trucks. And of course, I always stop because I understand that it's difficult for them to see, but a lot of people don't and they don't care. So there's so many things. He had a Brookwoods jacket on. That makes me nervous, by the way, just to let you know. We, as a neighborhood, had a huge fight with Brookwood that owned the Sylvan Street. I don't know if everybody remembers this, when they were trying to do stuff over in Brookwood. And then they promised us the green space, which is now being taken away. And they're, I don't know if everybody remembers this. I was in the middle of it. So now they're going to build, you know, units over there, which they can't even tell us if they're condos or they're townhouses, but they're going to build something, and they're trying to get 8 units. So this is why we're upset and we're worried, because whatever these changes are we going to be notified with what you're going to do? And believe me, I get it. You want to have your business there. You want to be able to keep the people that are there. There's not a lot of traffic coming in and out of there right now. There isn't. I mean, I drive by there every single day. 100 times a day I drive by that place. So I appreciate that. But moving forward, what is that going to look like? Like, that street is a nightmare. And if you're on that street at 4 o'clock, forget about getting up and down it. And it's not really fair to the other neighbors. And then if you move forward with building units, because I feel like there's going to be apartment units, I don't know, or something. I don't feel like, and if you do, the one thing that we really appreciate is parking for those people, because that's a whole nother issue. But just, I mean, I don't know, I just think that there's going to be more going on, and I know that, you know, either way they're going to go, because obviously this is going to keep going on, and you're going to probably get what you want, which I hope you do. But just, I want you to really think about the neighborhood, because it's really important to us to not have a ton of traffic, and, you know, and be safe for the people walking across the street, and being able to get up and down our street. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions by members of the public?
Sure. The question was where the number 14 came from in terms of how that was derived.
Okay.
So the Tapleyville, this was done in 2014. The idea was...
Part of the overlay, right?
I'm sorry?
Part of the overlay, correct?
Yes, the Tapleyville overlay was done in 2014. I believe the idea was like a gentle density, meaning that our downtown density, the highest zone, which is the High Street, which is like the least historic, the area that has the most amount of potential in downtown actually is High Street. That's a max of 36 units per acre. We did not want to go there. I was not here in 2014, but the planning department and town meeting certainly didn't want to go to something like that. And that's where the max of 14, but it could still be denied at 4. So the idea was that in between 4 and 4, they wanted to put a cap on it. A downtown is, more in the 30s and 40s. They didn't want that. So this was kind of like a medium amount of density. However, like I said, at 4 units, it still could be denied.
Thank you, Brian.
Any further questions from anyone?
Okay.
All right, it looks like back to you, Lou.
Okay, very good. All right. Anything further? Any further questions from the members of the board in terms of what we have? So that completes your presentation. Is that correct, Brian?
That is correct.
Okay. So coming back to the board, are there any questions or further discussion on this? Obviously, we're going to have, it's anticipated that we'll be continuing this public hearing and continue the discussion about these. So if someone who's not is watching this, is watching the tape a few days from now and wants to weigh in, they certainly can. Any further questions or comments by members of the board?
Brian, can you just give us the agenda? I mean, as far as the additional meetings after planning board, then there's going to be Selectmen and FinCom review. Can you just give us the dates? It seems like this was our third meeting. So,
Sure. It's a little bit in flux. We want to give it to the select board first and then to FinCom. I think the idea is that they would take it up at a meeting next week before the holiday. At least it would get into their packet. So, and then we're having a meeting with the clerk this week about when the warrant is actually opening and closing. So in terms of dates that are important, we would be continuing this hearing to the next one, which is January 14th. The idea is that there would probably be potentially one more after that if there are changes. But the hope is that we hear changes from Select Board and FinCom, if we hear anything, that we would hear prior to that January 14th date, so that we could actually bring those forward here on the 14th, and then actually discuss those changes.
so I assume you would want to pause a recommendation from us to bring this current draft forward to the selectmen, so you'd take a vote this evening of some sort?
I mean,
Not a vote for, well, I mean, usually we make a recommendation that we're in favor of as we pass it forward to the select board.
Gotcha. With the full notion that it could change, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah, so yeah, no,
Yep.
that totally makes
Mhm.
sense. I think
Yep.
now would be the time, if that is customary, that makes total sense to me.
I would make that motion,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so a motion has been made. Now, I guess one question, just procedurally, before let's go and Jim made the motion. Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Okay, a second by Jean. Discussion on it, just one question I had with respect to, we do have a current public hearing, so I assume that we can forward this with a favorable recommendation, obviously subject to change, and then also still continue the public hearing. Is that correct?
Yes, that's actually necessary to do that. We need to do both.
Okay, got it. Okay, very good. Well, we have the motion on the floor made by Jim and seconded by Jean, Jim, if I'm characterizing it correctly, to forward these zoning changes to the select board with the planning board's favorable recommendation, subject to change. Is that sound about right?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Motion's been made and has been seconded, so I'll call a roll. Jean?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I say yes. Okay, so it's been moved with a favorable recommendation. So, subject to change. Let's go and I'd like to entertain a motion as well to continue the public hearing on this matter.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by
Second.
Jane. Is there a second?
Mike,
Who
second.
seconded? I'm sorry.
Mike.
Okay, Mike, thank you. Second. Very good. So a motion has been made to continue this to and Jean, you made the motion. Would this would be continuing it
To January
to
14th.
the. Okay, got it. Very good. All right. So I'll call a roll. Jean,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
And I say yes. Okay. Very good. So the matter has been, so the public hearing is continued to our next meeting on January 14th, 2025. Okay. And just for information purposes, Brian, when is and sort of picking up on what Jim said earlier, just for members of the public, when is the select board going to be addressing this?
I actually don't know. I believe it is next week, the 17th.
Okay. Okay. So So the select board's Tuesday meeting, it's anticipated their Tuesday meeting, the 17th at 6:30. Is that correct?
I believe so. I don't think it has been forwarded yet, so I don't want to say the wrong information.
Okay. Understood. Got it. So we'll have to keep an eye out for the select board agenda then. Okay. Very good. All right, our next agenda item, and I want to be respectful of people's time. I thank you for your time here this evening, both to the board and the members of the public. Next and last item on our agenda are minutes. I believe we had October minutes that were forwarded. I'd like to entertain a motion on those minutes. These are minutes from October 22nd, 2024.
Make a motion, we accept the minutes from October 22nd, 2024.
Okay, motion's been made by Jean. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Tim. Okay, I'll call a roll on this. Jean?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm yes. Okay, so the minutes have been passed. Very good. Josh and Brian, anything further from staff in terms of we have our next meeting? This is our last meeting in the year, and what is our next meeting is January 14th.
Yep, that's right. So it will be the Trask Lane, the two items that we continued from tonight, the Trask Lane item, and then the zoning amendments, which we discussed. So those two items.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Anything else from any other members of the board?
Merry Christmas.
If not,
Go to bed.
absolutely. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everybody. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Very good. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Lou.
Yep. Have a good holiday.